Duskmourn is around the corner, and today I will show you a brand new mono-black pauper deck based on enchantments to kill your opponents. The plan is to use cheap enchantments like Fear of Lost Teeth, Hopeless Nightmare, and Okiba Reckoner Raid to chip away at our opponent's life totals. Payoffs such as Warehouse Tabby will create more tokens, and the newly introduced Valemurk Leech will threaten them even more. Cards like Corrupted Conviction and Village Rites will let us draw more cards, while Final Vengeance will let us use our enchantments as fodder in exchange for removal. Of course, this deck needs to run the synergy of Nested Shambler and Demonic Appetite to create 4 new Squirrel tokens once the Shambler dies, in a deck ready to eerie the MTG Pauper meta. Our first game is against Mono Red, featuring the new addition, Clockwork Percussionist. They start by playing Voldaren Epicure, and I follow up with Fear of Lost Teeth. They respond with a Goblin Blast Runner and Experimental Synthesizer, and we end up trading creatures. On my turn, I played Valemurk Leech and passed. Then, they played a second Blast Runner, killed my creature, and attacked. On my next turn, I could only cast Hopeless Nightmare and Wicked Visitor before passing the turn. They activate a second Synthesizer and cycle Implement of Combustion, then attack for 6. After combat, they pass. On my turn, I attack and then use Insight to draw 2 more cards, finding an Okiba Reckoner Raid, which I play. They respond by casting a third Synthesizer, and Goblin Tomb Raider joins the battlefield, allowing them to attack for 8, putting me down to 5 life. I draw a land, and with no other options, I scoop. For the second game, I decided not to use a sideboard, which will hold true for the rest of the matches with this deck. I play my cheap creatures on turn 1, and so does my opponent. They attack without hesitation, but I block with Fear of Lost Teeth, killing their Tomb Raider and creating 2 rat tokens. I draw a Nested Shambler and play it alongside Demonic Appetite, then pass the turn. On their turn, they use back-to-back removal spells to take out my Shambler, but they quickly realize where the game is headed, so they concede, and we move on to game 3. This hand looks fine, so I lead with Reckoner Raid to drain them early. They play 2 more creatures on their turn and attack, so on my turn I play Fear and pass. They sacrifice a monkey to Kuldota and cast End the Festivities, to which I respond by using Corrupted Conviction to kill one of their creatures before they attack. I untap but miss another land drop, so all I can do is play a Shambler and use Final Vengeance to kill their Blast Runner. They attack and, as expected, follow up with another End the Festivities to clear the board. I untap and play another Fear and pass. On their turn, they play an Epicure and Tomb Raider and attack. I block and use Corrupted Conviction to sacrifice my creature and kill their Goblin. Finally, I draw a land, allowing me to play Leech and another Reckoner Raid to make them lose additional life. Unfortunately, my opponent finds another Kuldota and a second Tomb Raider to attack with. I trade with the Tomb Raider but go down to 7 life. On my turn, I play a Wicked Visitor and use Final Vengeance to kill the remaining Tomb Raider. However, on their turn, they attack, dropping me to 4 life and finish me off with a Goblin Grenade. After this match, I swapped the Wicked Visitors for Shambling Ghasts, as they're cheaper and more synergistic with my sacrifice spells. I also replace Eviscerator's Insight with Deadly Dispute, prioritizing the ability to play more threats each turn over card draw. This final version of the deck is what I'll use for 2 matches against Rakdos Madness. They started with Voldaren Epicure, and I followed up with Shambling Ghast. I played a Valemurk Leech on my second turn, planning to cast Hopeless Nightmare later. However, with their mana untapped, it wasn't the right time to cast it, so I waited. At the end of my turn, they hit me with Fiery Temper, dropping me to 16. On their turn, they used Grab the Prize and Alms of the Vein to deal 5 damage. In response, I cast Village Rites, killing their Epicure and drawing 2 cards. Since they were tapped out, I took the opportunity to play a second Leech and back-to-back Hopeless Nightmares, putting myself back in the race and dropping them to 10 after my attack. On their next turn, they played another Epicure and passed. I followed up with Fear of Lost Teeth, pinging them for 2, then cast an Okiba Reckoner Raid to drain them for 3 more before attacking. They finally managed to kill one of my leeches and chump blocked the other, but finished it off on their turn with Galvanic Blast. At the end of their turn, I used Hopeless Nightmare's Scry ability and put an Okiba Reckoner Raid on top of my deck. Pre-combat, they killed my Fear, but its ability dropped them to 3 life. Post-combat, I played my enchantment. A Vampire's Kiss brought them up to 4 life, and I sacrificed my second enchantment to smooth my draws. On their turn, they cast Fateless Looting and played 2 Kitchen Imps, but didn't attack. On my next turn, I drew my third Okiba Reckoner Raid and used Final Vengeance to kill one of their creatures, winning game 1. I kept a strong hand in game 2 and led with Fear of Lost Teeth. They played a tapped land, so I attacked and post-combat added 2 more creatures to my board. They cast Fateless Looting and played an Imp and Epicure but didn't attack. I attacked again, and they blocked the fear. Post-combat, I sacrificed Shambling Ghast with Deadly Dispute to finish off the Kitchen Imp and played Hopeless Nightmare while they were tapped out. On their turn, they cast Faithless Looting and used Fiery Temper to kill my Tabi, bringing a Sneaky Snacker into play. I attacked and post-combat cast Village Rites to draw 2 more cards. I then played a Shambling Ghast and sacrificed it to Deadly Dispute before passing. A Vampire's Kiss drained me on their turn, and after we both attacked, we were tied at 16 life. I attacked on my turn and post-combat used Deadly Dispute into Final Vengeance to permanently remove their Sneaky Snacker, scrying 2 cards in the process. Corrupted Conviction drew me another Shambling Ghast, which I played along with Okiba Reckoner Raid before passing. On their turn, they used Demand Answers to put a Kitchen Imp into play, drawing 2 more cards, and eventually casting another Epicure. On my next turn, I played Shambling Ghast and attacked with the party. They blocked, and I used Corrupted Conviction to kill their Imp, putting them down to 10 life. I drew a Lich and Tabi, both of which I played immediately. They responded on their turn by casting Grab the Prize to summon another Sneaky Snacker, but passed without attacking. They killed my Lich on my turn, so I attacked with both remaining creatures. After combat, they used Galvanic Blast to kill my Okiba Reckoner Raid, but Tabi's ability generated a Rat token. On their next turn, they looted away 3 lands in a row and didn't attack, so on my turn, I attacked with everything, putting them down to 6. A new Okiba Reckoner Raid dropped them to 5. They hardcast a Kitchen Imp on their next turn, and on my turn, the Okiba Reckoner Raid put them at 4. After passing back and forth a couple of turns, I eventually drew a Hopeless Nightmare and attacked for the win. However, they had removal ready for the flipped Saga, so I ended up losing a creature. Post-combat, I played another Hopeless Nightmare, dropping them to 1. I used Hopeless Nightmare's Scry ability and put a Lich on top. On my next turn, I cast it and passed. My opponent didn't play anything significant, so I decided to risk it for the biscuit, but ended up losing my entire board. To make matters worse, they started chaining spells together, filling their board in the blink of an eye. Fortunately, I top-decked Hopeless Nightmare and managed to win the match. Since I know you wanted to see more of this Rakdos Madness deck, I decided to record one more match against my first opponent. We started by playing Shambling Ghast, aiming to drain them a bit more with our enchantments by dropping the Lich on turn 2. On their turn, the opponent used Plotted Robbery and drew 2 more cards by discarding a Snacker with Grab the Prize before passing. I untapped and played 2 back-to-back raids to get back in the game, putting them down to 15. They responded with another Grab the Prize and Alms of the Vein, dealing 5 more damage and adding a Snacker to the field. A Chain Lightning then dropped me to 8. I untapped, played another Lich and a Fear, and attacked, putting them down to 11. However, after chaining some spells and attacking, they managed to deal lethal damage, so we moved on to game 2. My hand wasn't great, but I decided to keep it. They played an Epicure, and I attacked with my Ghast, then played another before passing. They used a Blood token to cycle, and played a Kitchen Imp, dropping me to 17. Before passing, I used Village Rites to draw 2 more cards. I untapped, attacked with my creatures, and they blocked the token. Post-combat, I used Final Vengeance to kill the Imp and played a Raid, putting me ahead in the race. On their turn, they plotted a Robbery, and I attacked and deployed all my creatures on the board. They discarded a Snacker and plotted a second Robbery. On my next turn, I attacked again and passed, waiting to see their response. They discarded Alms of the Vein and Vampire Kiss drained more life, but they chose not to attack. I drew Demonic Appetite and put it on my Nested Shambler, attacking with my party. They just jump blocked. On their turn, they played a ping land and another Epicure, dropping me to 12. Back on my turn, I sacrificed my Ghast to kill the Epicure and used Nightmare before attacking. They discarded Alms of the Vein before my attack. On their turn, they used Faithless Looting, and I scryed to secure my draws. Both an Imp and a Snacker joined the board, and a Fiery Temper dealt with my raid. Then, a Chain Lightning put me down to 4. On my turn, I used Final Vengeance to kill both the Snacker and the Imp, securing the win and pushing us to the final game. In game 3, my hand wasn't great, but I played Hopeless Nightmare on turn 1, giving them no value. They played an Epicure and passed. I played a Balmurk Lich, but it got taken out by Fiery Temper. On my turn, I played a Raid but held off playing the Shambler and Appetite, knowing they had mana up. As expected, they had a Lightning Bolt ready, which they used on me instead. Once they passed, I tried combining both cards, but they had another Fiery Temper in response. Luckily, I cast Hopeless Nightmare, forcing them to truly discard a card. They attacked again, and on my turn, I found a Tabi and attacked. On their turn, they found removal for the raid, but I got a Rat token thanks to it. In response, they tried to kill the Tabi, So I sacrificed a Nightmare to put a second token into play. They attacked, and on my turn, I hit back with my party. Post-combat, I used Corrupted Conviction, found a Shambler, played it, and cracked the Nightmare when they used Looting, putting a raid on top. I attacked again, traded creatures, played the raid, and passed. The opponent attacked and dropped me to 10, then to 7 with a third Chain Lightning. I attacked once more, and post-combat, another Village Rites drew me 2 cards. I used Nightmare to put them down to 2 life. On their turn, I cracked the Nightmare and they passed. I tried to use Appetite on my Rat token to apply pressure, but they had a Bolt ready to kill it, stopping my attack. With no more options, they played a land and scooped, handing me the win with this new and improved Black Sacrifice deck.